very much. I'm Margaret Lovell, and we are in a meeting of Ward 28C. I'd like to welcome all of you, and thank you for spending a part of your Sunday with us. I think this is going to be a particularly good ward meeting. I'd like to think that most of them are, but we have some sterling speakers today, and we're going to learn about two candidates for important offices. I would like to first remind everyone who has received the email that Bomi and Linda have donated this book, Here Right Matters by Alexander Vindman, as a drawing. So we have a door prize. And Liz Dyer, who's our vice chair, is taking down everyone's name, and she's going to do a completely fair, and I haven't asked her how it's going to happen, drawing, so that at the end of the meeting, we will know who won the book, and then I will drop it off to you. So be sure, if you win the book, to stay with me just for a minute after the meeting ends so that I can confirm your address and get it to you right away. As I mentioned, we have 3 folks to speak to us today, probably 4, maybe 5 or 6 actually, but 3 main speakers. And the first one of those is John Allen. John is a candidate for the Bernalillo County Sheriff. A little background on him. John grew up in Albuquerque, went to West Mesa. He was a patrolman for the New Mexico State Police, headquartered out of Las Vegas for 4 years. And then in 2001, came over to the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. He served in several supervisory roles in homicide, violent crimes, crisis intervention team, mobile crisis team, and special weapons and tactics, and retired as a sergeant after spending 19 years with BCSO. John was the lead instructor for the Law Enforcement Academy at CNM, and his current role at CNM is instructing and training law enforcement officers from all over the state of New Mexico, as well as APD. He is one of the few master use of force instructors and certifiers in the state, and this is a certification that is focused on law enforcement understanding of use of force, respecting constitutional rights, case law, and ethical decision-making. So I've asked John to join us here today to talk to us a little bit about his campaign for sheriff and his plans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you, everybody else, for allowing me to be here and spend this quality time with you. Great to see everybody, at least on Zoom, so we can speak. The introduction speaks for itself in terms of my experience, and I want to make sure that I enter the department of the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department with celerity, because that's what we need with all of the social issues going on and also our crime epidemic and a lot of the questions that people and constituents have asked me while I've been making my tour around the city. My main platforms, a lot of it is ensuring public safety, as everybody is completely aware, but making sure that we're doing that correctly. I am currently a law enforcement and lead instructor at CNM Law Enforcement Academy, and I help with APD's police reform and also different departments, not only from locally, but from around the state every spring with Union County, Raton, and people from all over the state. Transparency in policing is something that I really wanted to introduce on my platform. I was one of the supervisors in charge of the officer-involved shooting, which was the Metro Area Task Force. So a lot of the shootings that we've had with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, Albuquerque Police Department, and State Police, I was one of the supervisors on there to see the swiftness and how we investigated those shootings. Also, a big thing which involves all of you, which also helps the crime epidemic, is my engaged community policing platform, which I'll discuss here in a little bit. And also data-driven policing, but my main platform is also for mental health. Like Margaret said, I was a supervisor and was one of the first to help with the mobile crisis teams for the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department and a crisis intervention team. It became a little bit more personal for me when I saw that people would call the law enforcement when somebody was in a state of crisis and it ended up being in a deadly force situation. And what angered me and concerned me was I saw at the Sheriff's Department specifically what resources weren't allowed for the deputies before they even arrived at the scene to make sure that we could help at least prevent a deadly force situation or any type of use of force situation. Like was stated earlier in my introduction, I'm one of the only few of the master use of force instructors in the state of New Mexico. So all of the concerns considering just not 8th Amendment and 4th Amendment and police brutality and excessive force, I know what I can do with the sheriff's department since I worked there and saw the problems before I retired, what to correct immediately, and also what to do to mend the relationships, which we'll need to with the Albuquerque Police Department, the district attorney's office, and so many other people, especially all of you within the community. We need trust, and in order to fight crime or whatever platform any candidate brings, we have to have trust from you because you are the ones who get us into this elected seat, and you depend on us to do the job correctly. I won't talk way too much about myself. I'd rather hear some of your questions that you have, so please go right ahead.
Thank you, John. I do have a question, and then I'd like to entertain questions from the floor as well. Some communities around the country have talked about consolidating regional law enforcement agencies. And so in Albuquerque, that would mean a combination of APD and the Bernco Sheriff. What advantages do you see to combining those agencies for us, for the residents of Bernalillo County?
At this time, I don't see any advantages, and let me explain why. I know for a fact, because this has gone before the voters twice and it's failed, but I do know, talking to the unincorporated areas, that because of the calls for service in the city, that would pull a lot of manpower and services from the unincorporated areas. Also, with under the DOJ reform and how the Albuquerque Police Department is how it's being changed and ran right now, doing a crime epidemic, it'd be very difficult, no matter how that's gone with the county commission and merging those with the city council, between trying to determine all the details involved in making your department run efficiently. I think that would actually be a disservice to you all right now, as far as it running efficiently and answering for calls of service. And I'll give one example. There is a difference between the sheriff's department and APD. One of the difference, something simple. If you get involved in a traffic accident, you are told to either call into a non-emergency line or go to a substation. Well, imagine if your child calls for an accident and they're panicked, and you are also, and there is no help for them at all other than to make a phone call or go to a substation. I don't think that's really practical, and I don't think that is a great customer service tactic. And that's something, and not taking a dig at the Albuquerque Police Department, that is just something they cannot do right now with the crime epidemic and the manpower problem.
Okay, thank you, John. Other questions from members of our audience? Liz has a question.
Yeah, John, thanks for coming today. This is really a great thing. I'm Liz Steyer. I am wondering if there's a big problem with trying to get enough mental health providers, or not providers, but I guess people that are advisors to work with the sheriff department. It seems like we have a huge shortage of those people in our state right now. Is that something you see as an issue to implement a lot of these sort of things?
Currently, it is an issue with the sheriff's department as we speak, yes. If I had the opportunity and the privilege of being in the elected seat, it would not be, because you need a leader in that position to open the door of communication to allow just not sworn personnel. We need to allow mental health professionals, not just social workers, but people from outside of the department that also provides not only oversight, but other ideas and a third-party interest to make sure that we have efficiency and making sure that we're correcting our mistakes for the bottom line of making sure that we're serving the community correctly. And I just don't want to talk about mental health of officers, but for all of you, if someone has someone in a state of crisis, that is something we need with a steering committee, not just a Citizens Police Academy to make us look great that we're dealing with the community. We have to get into the weeds on mental health to fix this problem, because not only are we seeing mental health as a problem, we are also seeing mental health which goes into homelessness, and also mental health people self-medicating with methamphetamine. And we're not even getting down to the root cause of what the problem is. We're not going to arrest our way out of this crime epidemic if we are not getting to the root causes, helping homelessness, mental health, and the narcotic problem.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Bob. Bob, you're muted.
Yeah, understand that.
Thank you.
John, I'm involved with the community policing councils. I'm the chair of the Foothills Council, and mental health and constitutional policing are key issues for us. But my question is more related to other agencies that the sheriff needs to interact with. And I'm thinking specifically of the Bernalillo County Behavioral Health Department and the new Albuquerque Safety Department. Can you take a few minutes or a minute to talk about that?
Absolutely. That's exciting. You're asking me that. Thank you very much. One of the things, like I said, establishing communications is one of the things I want to do is bring in a mental health coordinator. That will make sure that with community policing and all the other entities out there, that we're making sure that we have best practices and that we also provide our deputies with the tools, and then we open up that communication with behavioral health, whether it's city or with the county, because all of the ideas that we have and the different problems that we see in different areas of the city, that is something that we need to see on a board to address those problems directly. And your second part of the question was what again?
I was concerned or interested in interactions with the new Albuquerque Safety Department. But you might also think about the fact that the current sheriff never seems to show up or send a representative to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council meetings.
Yes. So like I said, whatever everyone wants to see, I can talk all day, but what I want to do also is actually show it with action. I'm an actionable person. And I've actually been with the Community Safety Department. I've been out with the Violent Early Intervention Unit. And what I saw in with Angel Garcia specifically is he was dealing with a homicidal suspect and his brother and the family. And the information that they found out was the brother of the decedent wanted to retaliate. So for the detective, they actually sent over to the violent intervention program and went and spoke with the family and the brother himself and said, we know what you're about to do. There are consequences that will be involved with any crime, but we want to actually offer you resources and prevent crime. That's what we need. What people also didn't see is from the detective standpoint is they didn't have to do another case on intimidation of a witness, and they were able to focus on their homicide itself. And thus that'll help prevent crime later and making sure you do a thorough and just investigation that we either put someone in jail or provide the resources or what else we need to do. We have to be engaged and look for something different with the community safety program to not only help the community out, but to give officers and deputies resources. Again, we have to address the root causes.
Thank you. Other questions for John? Not sure I could see all the hands. I've got two screens working here, so.
And also, Margaret, the last question that I did forget to ask for Mr. Carlton is, yes, a representative, like I said, it's part of my engaged community policing. Instead of just me being there as the sheriff, I understand people would want me to be at any community meeting, but there will be representation everywhere. I want to be in every corner of this county, every meeting of this county to find out the ideas. And I just don't want people having to come to my office. That's why the county provides a car with your taxpayer money to go to you to find out the problem. A representative does need to be there. And at the same time, with my engaged community policing plan, I'll be completely honest with you, I actually don't want to see command staff all of the time at a community meeting. I want to see people with boots on the ground patrolling your neighborhoods that your face is familiar with, because bottom line is you want to face a phone number and contact information to address your problem immediately, not 2 to 3 weeks down the road when there's another meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you. Judith, you have a question for John?
I was wondering if you think police unions are helpful, and specifically, do you think APD's union is helpful?
The union can be helpful if it's ran correctly. So I will bifurcate both unions between APD and the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. The current sheriff now, it's like I said, if you have happy employees, you'll actually have a better service. It's run kind of a little bit like a business. But when you're violating workers' contracts and not allowing, such as I tried to do, expand the mental health mobile crisis team, there's nobody else that was behind me to go ahead and try to support that plan or that vision. The union was there to support me. On the other hand, unions can hurt to a point if you're not totally involved in your community, you're just thinking of your employees. We have to think of, my moniker for my campaign is Allen for All. That's the same way a department needs to be ran. Of not only do you have to think of your employees, you work for the community, and I am hired by you or elected by you. You have taxpayer money. You're dependent on a service. Is it done with fairness and efficiency? And is the union speaking for everybody to make sure that the community is being served correctly? So hopefully that answers your question.
It begins to get to it. Which union supported was it your concept of the community safety program?
For mobile crisis team, like I said, for the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, not the Albuquerque Police Department. Those are actually two separate unions.
Got it.
And they run through two different entities. One, the APD, is through the Fraternal Order Police, and BCD's SA union is ran through a different formality.
Okay. Thank you.
If there are there other questions for John? Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay, I don't see any hands up. John, thank you wait. Josie has a question. Can you get unmuted?
I did. I just couldn't find the hand. But something that's been weighing on my mind, given the recent tragedy at Washington Middle School, how does the system deal with, what can we expect that child to face? And how can we do we bring restorative justice? Do we have something in place for someone so young?
We have a base there, and that's why, as you see on my campaign, one of the main things I'm trying to do is pair myself with people that do legislative law. I don't write the law. Representative senators, there needs to be a bigger talking point, and a lot of people need to have a seat at the table. The juvenile justice system is completely different from the adult system, as you know. And I know you talked about restorative justice. We have a base, but we need to really expand and detail that to make sure, again, with the root cause, that it doesn't happen again. I think I heard some in another community meeting the other day that this certain community, they were concerned, but they weren't as much because it didn't affect them, because they were not in a lower socioeconomic status or area. This could happen to anybody in any community. So there needs to be more programs that is legislative law, and this gets into gun control and gun laws. It goes into many other branches. We need to expound and strengthen the ideas for our youth to succeed, and we have to stop this gun violence. We can't talk about it anymore. Now it's affecting our community 2 to 3 times a week. And especially for our youth, that's something that we need to get with legislative session, talk to representatives and senators for, in reference to juvenile law. That is a completely different monster, in making sure that we are assisting our youth.
Thanks. Liz, you have a question?
Yeah, that just brought up a whole nother thing, and that is concerning to all of us. So it would be interesting to know, what is your position on gun control? And
So you will hear every sheriff talk about that he wants to protect the Second Amendment. I do, but let's be real. You have to be and have sensible gun laws. For instance, the 13-year-old, why in the heck is a firearm loose around the home and doesn't have any type of locking mechanism in a safe or somewhere safe where they can't access the firearm? That rolls into adult, and everybody talks about the red flag law. I dealt with it many times with mental health, to where we would get a call and we would find out to whether the suspect had a suicidal or a homicidal ideation. If they had a homicidal ideation and they had specific threats, why are they allowed to have firearms? Or does it need to go through the courts or a district court judge specifically to take the firearms out of the home so we can prevent a crime or a mass shooting? Those are something that we need to look at and have sensible gun control laws, so I'm for them. And like I said, the conversation has to be had now, today, and make sure that we're all safe. Common sense gun laws. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, John. I would now like to move on to Josie, who opened the door for herself very well. Thank you very much for that. And John, thank you. I hope you can stay with us. We'll understand if you have another event you need to attend, but love to have you stay if you can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Josie Dominguez, we know Josie because she is our precinct chair for 530. She's homegrown, she's in our ward, and she is running for APS school board in District 6. So our ward is split between District 6 and District 7. We heard from Julie Brenning, and we're going to hear from her right at the end of this meeting as well with an update on her campaign activities. Now I'd like to have Josie introduce herself to you. I'm going to give you a little background information. 30 years, almost 30 years experience as a public school teacher. She taught 12th grade advanced placement English and honors 9th and 11th grade classes, and also skills appropriate AP quality curricula to students in both developmental English and regular English classes. I think, well, we'll let Josie talk about that. That's important to me. Let's see, she welcomed special education students who were being mainstreamed and encouraged English language learners transitioning into her English classes. Very open door policy there. Oh, and one of these students is now a New Mexico state representative, and another is the legal director of a local organization. Josie also taught Spanish and designed an accelerated Spanish class for bilingual students. And into those classes, she welcomed monolingual English students who had a facility for language learning and or a desire for a challenge. Josie knows that it is possible for all students to learn at an advanced level. She knows firsthand how to engage and encourage students of all aptitudes and backgrounds, and she has a vision for replicating it across our cities. She believes that as a community, we all benefit when our children are loved, supported, and inspired. The type of public education that reinforces those values is within our reach, and our kids will flourish if we can provide it. I think that's enough. I have a little bit more. I wrote most of this myself, so I'm very, very proud to know Josie, and I would love to have her tell you about herself now. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good to be here. My full name is Josefina Elizabeth Dominguez, but I go by Josie, and that happened when I went to the public schools. I'm running for District 6 school board, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey with the public schools, which began in Tucson, Arizona, my birthplace. I'm the daughter of a very brave Mexican immigrant mother. I spent my life advocating for Mom and advocating for anybody who was in the same vulnerable position she was in. But my journey begins back on my first day of school. Mom reminds me that I must hold the teacher in high regard and show the utmost respect. Respeto, she tells me. She dresses me smartly, and off I go, excited with anticipation. But then something goes horribly wrong. I, along with a few other Spanish-speaking girls, get paddled for being too boisterous in the bathroom. This is a severe punishment. It leaves bruises on my little butt. I go home ashamed and crestfallen, and sobbing, I confess my transgression to my mother, whom I think is going to be horribly disappointed in me. She's astonished, comforts me, and relays the incident in broken English to my stepfather, Klaus Schrader, who stands about 6'3" with a very gruff demeanor. And the next day he takes me to school and confronts a very surprised teacher. And I am mortified all over again. The next memory that comes to me is that of being in a new classroom where I find myself with my fellow transgressors and a few others. But this time it's a welcoming place with familiar Mexican decor. The teacher is Mrs. Lopez. She speaks our language and is warm and friendly, but formal. She teaches us counting rhymes in Spanish. She teaches us how to dance ballet folklorico. And essentially, she's putting us at ease in the school environment. We feel safe. And then she introduces us to English. Mrs. Lopez wisely enlists my mother's help. Mom, with her 8th grade education, teaches me how to write letters in Spanish to my father in Mexico. And suddenly, that process lifts the fog of learning a strange new language. I see that there's a structure to my native language that has fascinating similarities to English. Mrs. Gardner takes me to the next level of English proficiency in 2nd grade. She has a Midwestern formality and friendliness that puts me at ease. With caring teachers, I flourish. And over time, I blossom into an English and Spanish teacher, devoting 28 years to teaching diverse literature in the classroom. Yes, I own that I am a traditionalist. I love Homer's Odyssey, William Shakespeare, and William Faulkner. But I'm also a multiculturalist. So I teach Leslie Marmon Silko. I teach the great Toni Morrison, Richard Wright, Jean Wakatsuki, Rodolfo Anaya, and Sandra Cisneros. There has to be room for the eclectic teacher, the traditionalist and the multiculturalist in the classroom. And this is why I'm running for this office. As a teacher, I strived to bring the same formality, care, and compassion to my classroom that Mrs. Lopez and Mrs. Gardner did for me so many years ago. I know that for a child to truly succeed, we must provide schooling that is welcoming, inclusive, equitable, and we must ensure that all children, no matter their zip code, have access to quality education. And we do this by retaining and recruiting a diverse pool of teachers in every subject area. What I mean by that is that no student should ever come up to a teacher like me and say, Ms. Dominguez, you're the first minority teacher I've ever had in my honors classes. That should not happen. We do this by reducing class size, a work condition that can be demoralizing. When I moved from Texas, where I had 15 kids in a classroom, into 40 children in the high school, Highland High School, actually, I was astounded, to say the least. But over time, that situation gets demoralizing. We protect public education and we improve it by championing school safety to include protecting LGBTQ students and other vulnerable populations from bullies, especially political bullies. My name is Josefina Elizabeth Dominguez, Josie, and I'm running to win School Board District 6 because I have a vision, credentials, and heart to address the challenges that APS faces. And with your help, with volunteer coordinators, house parties, and donations, our campaign will be victorious on November 2nd. Thank you.
Josie, that was terrific. I know you have a website. I'm not sure it's up yet. Do you have the name?
Yes, if Mario is in the house, Mario Samiglia, or I will post a link to josieforaps.com.
Okay.
And I also have a Facebook page that is Josie for Public Schools.
Okay, looks like Mario has it in the chat now.
In the chat, yes. Thank you, Mario.
So I have a question for you and
Yes.
the others. So special ed programs can wind up being dumping grounds for English learners, children experiencing trauma, children living in poverty. What can be done to be sure that kids aren't misdiagnosed and that all kids receive the services that they need?
Well, so there is a system. I mean, APS did recognize that that was a problem. And I reached out and spoke to a retired principal who is also running for office in District 3, Jinx Baskerville. And this is not supposed to happen. And yet, there is a systems breakdown. And we think it's happening at the classroom level. And I understand. Teachers are overwhelmed when they have too many children. And if they see a behavioral problem, they want to remove that situation. Unfortunately, we don't have a safety net for teacher or for child. And so that is something that I will definitely bring to the board for discussion and evaluation, because we need to address both, right? The child who is suffering trauma, and usually it's momentary, and the teacher who needs to get on with her classroom instruction.
Okay, thanks. I saw Julie nodding her head on that one too. Other questions for Josie? All right, well, thank you very much. Josie, stay with us if you can.
I will.
Oh, wait, Judith is waving. I'm sorry, Judith. Forgive me.
I couldn't get to the hand quick enough. I wanted to ask you about your, what do you think of the Yazzie lawsuit and that decision?
Well, I think it's the correct decision. And, you know, it mirrors, it doesn't surprise me. When I was at Highland, we had a fabulous curriculum vice principal. And we were trying to figure out how to address the number of Native American students who were failing ninth grade English. And so we enlisted a Native American teacher who was working, I was working with her. And we designed a class, a Native American literature class, and anybody could take the class. And so it was a mixed, it was a diverse classroom. We had great success with it. But the minute that vice principal left the school, the principal that replaced her got rid of the program and used the monies for other curriculum issues. So that kind of, we need to streamline, right? Those sorts of successes.
Thank you.
Other questions for Josie? I'll pause to make sure anybody gets a hand up who wants one. I don't see one. So again, Josie, thank you very much. And I'm thrilled that you're running.
Thank you.
Welcome. Hang in with us. Let's see. All right. Now we have Representative Pamela Herndon. I think most of us know her. She is our new State House representative, having been appointed in June, I think, June of 2021. A little background, Pamela got her bachelor's degree in business administration from Howard University and her law degree from the University of Texas Law School. She worked for the IRS as a senior litigation attorney, and then in New Mexico, that was, I think, in Albuquerque. And then Attorney General Patricia Madrid appointed her to serve in New Mexico's litigation division. And there she provided legal representation to state officials and agencies before she was appointed general counsel for the state regulation and licensing department. Went on to serve as a deputy cabinet secretary in New Mexico's General Services Department. In 2012, Pamela became the executive director of the Southwest Women's Law Center. And in 2018, she founded the KWH Law Center for Social Justice and Change and was the president and CEO. And Pamela, when you talk to us, tell us again what KWH means. I want to hear that again. Thank you. So let's see what else we have here. Elected as a member of the New Mexico Electoral College in 2008 and as a member of the Albuquerque chapter of the American Association of University Women and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She served on the boards of Emerge New Mexico, the African American Performing Arts Center Foundation, the Con Alma Health Foundation, and the United States Eagle Federal Credit Union. Lots of awards, and I'm going to just, I know it's going to embarrass you, I'm going to do it anyway. Let's see, 2012 Public Lawyer of the Year, presented by the Public Law section of the New Mexico State Bar. 2015 named Lawyer of the Year, and that was by the Albuquerque Bar Association. 2019 named as a W.K. Kellogg Fellow. 2020 recognized on the list of 100 outstanding Democratic women in New Mexico, and also received the Purple Ribbon Award for her outstanding work for survivors of domestic violence. And in 2021, just this year, received the prestigious Everyday Hero Award, and that's certainly very fitting. So Pamela, tell us a little bit about what's going to be happening, and tell us about that law firm name.
So thank you very much, Margaret, for that introduction, and thank you all. I will just say that in terms of my work as a trial attorney, it was in 3 areas that I worked as an attorney with the Internal Revenue Service. Once in Denver, Colorado, here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and in Phoenix, Arizona. So for those of you who may not know, there was a reinvention of government under Al Gore and when he was vice president. And so they were trying to combine the way in which the Internal Revenue Service was working. So I actually flew back and forth between Albuquerque and Phoenix during the last part of my years with the Internal Revenue Service. And I am proud to say that's simply because they moved the Albuquerque office to Phoenix. And so I'm really proud to say that I entered a contest with Southwest Airlines that said, why do you fly Southwest Airlines and what does it mean to you? Well, it allowed me to leave on a Monday morning and go to work in Phoenix and come back on a Friday evening so I could spend time with my family, my children, my husband. And as a result of my talking about how Southwest Airlines kept a family together, even though I was working miles away from my home, I won a prize that gave me tickets to take my family round trip on a couple of trips for family reunions. And I was really pretty excited about that. If I can ever find that essay that I wrote, I think I'm going to publish it one day. But with respect to my work, of course, Margaret gave you a synopsis of what I've been doing. And with respect to KWH Law Center, a law center is a nonprofit law center focused on helping to raise the well-being of middle and low-income individuals with a focus on women, children, and families with children. And the KWH stands for my mother's initials. Her name is Catherine Wade Herndon. And I grew up in Texas, and my mother and my grandmother were activists for women during their times living in Texas. So the biggest issue that was facing women at the time, of course, was whether or not they could have own property, they could have credit in their own names, whether or not they could have a sustainable life without having a male in their lives to move forward. Well, my grandfather actually died in the flu epidemic of 1918, for example. That was it. And he was a great mechanic, and he actually passed away. But my grandmother then had these 3 children. What was she going to do with them? She couldn't get a house. She had a hard time getting credit. She just hard time living as a woman with these 3 kids. So people kept telling her, but you have to marry, you have to marry. And one of the things that she ended up doing is she ended up marrying a man that she did not love. And her entire life was spent after living with someone who she did love, living with somebody that she didn't, because the law seemed to dictate how her life was going to be spent. So I just share with you that those types of things went forward. My mother was a school teacher, and as an African-American woman, she had a very difficult time getting a job in what was the Corpus Christi Independent School District, the major school district in Corpus Christi. So she was able to get a job in what was known as the West Oso Independent School District, which was a little further out. But the good thing about that, guess who one of her students was? One of her students was Selena, the singer. So she was in my mom's 2nd grade class. So that was pretty exciting, and my mom was pretty happy about that. But the fact that my mother had a master's degree, was highly intelligent, and she could not get a job in the major school district in Corpus Christi was also an impetus behind her work and the work that I continue to do. So now where am I, and how have I come full circle? So before I went to law school and sitting down as a 6th grader, I would watch a man by the name of Peter Jennings with the news. And one of the things that he talked about was a lot of disparities. He talked about one in Louisiana, about these families who were living in these very poorly designed housing, and they were paying a lot of money for living there. And so I remember Peter Jennings to this day saying, who will help these people? And I remember saying, sitting in front of that TV, that I would come to the rescue. I did go to law school. My life got a little bit diverted in between, but now I've come full circle, and I have been doing social justice work, and I'm really excited and honored to be able to sit in the New Mexico legislature and also make a big difference in the lives of the community where I have been living for the past 30 years. Let me tell you about the 5 major areas that I'm looking at, and I look forward to your questions. So the first item that I'm looking at, and this is not in any particular order, but 5 issues that I am addressing. One is small business. And if you drive up and down Juan Tabo, you look at Caracol Plaza, you look at the areas even outside of the district, you will see that many of those small businesses that were once open have closed. And why is that? Why have they closed when they had this CARES money that was available? And what do we need to do to bring them back? Because small business is the viability of our communities. It's also the source and a major resource for jobs within our communities. So that's one thing that I'm looking at. I'm working, as a matter of fact, very closely with a man who's been involved with small business, and I have spoken to Patricia Lundstrom, who heads up the Appropriations Committee, like, what can we do? So I'm working on that plan. I can only hope that I can get the governor to embrace the final determinants of that plan, but we will see. That's the goal. The second thing is jobs. And then what about jobs in our city, in our community? Of course, within those small business areas, that's one thing. But I'm also looking at the fact that within our state of New Mexico, our state is comprised of 51% women. And so if you look at how women are being paid across the board, we are still looking at what's called equal pay days, but women are not getting paid equally necessarily for the jobs that they're doing, even when they're they have the same or similar background as a man who may be working beside them. But the other thing that I'm looking at is talking to unions. I am looking for more apprenticeship programs and journeywomen programs, because what I'm finding is that those programs provide a higher rate of pay for individuals, and we want to see them in those higher rates of pay. And when John Allen becomes sheriff, John, I'm going to expect you to do a great deal of outreach to women so that I see more women on as a part of your personnel and in the area of sheriffs and not as clerical workers necessarily. So those are two things. The third thing that I'm looking at, of course, is crime. And I can tell you that my husband and I walk around the district, and one night as we were walking out, one of our the members in the district said, Pamela, my car was broken into last night. It's the first time that I ever left it unlocked. What are we going to do about this crime? Well, if you walk down these streets in our neighborhood, you will see that there are no street lights on the streets themselves where we reside. You will see them on the major thoroughfares like facing Lomas or Constitution. But if you go down the major streets, you're not going to see lights. And I realized that. And so I said, well, what we're going to do, the first thing is we're going to put a light on this street. And there happens to be one pole on my entire street where I live. And I have requested as a pilot project to have a light put on that pole for our street. They told me it would take 12 weeks. I did reach out to our commissioner and to the city council because this is an area which is beyond that of the state, other than we may give money to implement making sure that there are street lights in place. So as soon as that street light gets in place, we're going to see the street lit up more and to see if that reduces crime in the area and break-in into cars. The other thing is that I'm looking at is we've talked a lot about gun safety. So yesterday I was in a press conference talking about the introduction of the Bernie Hardgrove Gun Safety Act. And so that's in honor of the young 13-year-old who was shot 6 times in front of his fellow classmates by another 13-year-old. And so how did that 13-year-old get access to that gun? And that's the purpose of the Gun Safety Act. So I am asking as a part of this legislation to lock these guns in when you are not in the same place as the gun and you are the gun owner. So I've been hearing lots of questions about, well, if I'm in my house, I don't want my gun locked. If you're in your house, you don't have to have your gun locked if you are there with your gun because you are the gun owner. But if you go away and you're somewhere else, you lock that gun up so that we make sure it doesn't get into the hands of the wrong person. That is the major focus. And if that gun causes the death of somebody because of your negligence in securing it, then we are asking for a 4th-degree felony for you to face for being so irresponsible. And so there are 5 lawmakers who are working with me on this piece of legislation. It's Joy Garrett, it's Debbie Saranaya, it's Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, Patricia Roybal Caballero, and me, Pamela Herndon. So these are the strong women who are putting this piece of legislation forward. And then 2 more things, and I'll hurry, Margaret, so I don't use up all my time. The 4th one is respect to education. You know, I've had a conversation with people who work as support within our education system. And I'm talking about the janitors, the education assistants, the people who work in the cafeterias. And what they're telling me is that during the last legislative session, we gave raises to teachers, which we should do. But they said, what about us? They said to me, I work 2 and 3 jobs just so that I can pay for my house, so that I can have food on the table, so that I can have reasonable transportation. When am I going to get a raise? What I want to see is these supplemental people who support our children every single day in various areas, that we also give them a raise. As we talk to children and we look to what happened with respect to in the Benny Hardgrove matter, there should be a mental health counselor on a regular basis in every single school. What I am finding is that the children are stressed as the families are stressed. Are they being faced with a possible eviction, as we're looking at right now with the Supreme Court saying, well, I'm lifting that eviction moratorium. But thank goodness for people like the Supreme Court in New Mexico in our state, that eviction moratorium is in place. And I will tell you, as a part of my work at KWH Law Center, that I have helped at a minimum 34 families relieve that stress off their back so that they did not get evicted. And what we found out is that when people were going to the places where the CARES Act money was available, there's still millions of dollars that hasn't been distributed, but there are so many roadblocks, so many barriers, they can't get that money. But what we could do to My Law Center and raising money through a private resource, we could say, tell us what your problem is. Is it related to COVID? We sent the check and the burden was lifted. And I'm really happy that we were able to do that. And one last thing as a part of education, as I've spoken to people within our district, there's a way in which we're teaching history and resources that may not necessarily be correct in each and every point in time. So we're looking at trying to create a pilot program where we have people who are ingrained in these areas and who can teach it correctly. And for example, if there's a discussion about the Holocaust in your history class, you don't just show a group of dead bodies within an area saying, oh, this is an encampment, but you tell the story of the Holocaust. And so what we're looking at is trying to create a pilot program where we bring teachers from all quadrants of the state together in a program where they're learning correctly about curriculum, about resources, about lesson plans on how you can teach these sources in a good and resourceful and respectful manner. And then finally, I do want to talk about that access to housing. And with respect to housing, what we want to do and what I never want to see happen in the District 28 is to see anybody evicted, whether if they can't pay their mortgage or if they can't pay their rent. And I can tell you that I have helped people within the district through KWH Law Center before I became a representative. And so we don't want to see that happen again. And how do we get more affordable housing within our state? Well, one of the things that we need to look at is CDFI financing, which is Community Development Financing Investment, so that we can help people have more access to homes. And, I just want to bring up one last thing. I worked at the Regulation and Licensing Department. As a part of that department is something called the Manufactured Housing Division. And people tend to think of manufactured housing as just trailers. But if you take a look at these, they are more than just trailers. These are very well developed and extremely nice looking homes and comfortable that you can actually make a community out of them where they look really nice, and they will be places that individuals can have a safe, affordable home. So I will just tell you that those things are some of the items that I'm looking at. How do we make this work? And how do we make sure that our community rises together? So with those 5 items, I will stop, but I will also tell you, I want to give you my website. My website is PamelaHerndon.com if you want to learn any more about me. And don't forget that Pamela is spelled P-A-M-E-L-Y-A. I'll also put that in the chat. And my Facebook page is Herndon4NM. So you can always go and look at that. And the 4 is F-O-R. So it's Herndon4NM. So with that, I'll stop, Margaret. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. But that's my platform and the things that I'm looking at right now.
Thank you, Pamela. That's wonderful. That was just what I hoped to hear. Oh, you're getting applause. Folks are clapping. I have a question for you, but I'd like to see if anybody from the floor has one before, because I've been hogging the first questions. Anybody else want to come in first? There we go, Bob Carroll.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Pamela. She's certainly responsive to her, to the citizens in her district. And my wife is involved in the effort to expand Holocaust education in New Mexico. And Pamela was willing, very promptly to sit down with us and give us some really good ideas. And we're working away. But I just wanted to let everyone know that she's, very responsive to the people in the district, and has been a big help to us in getting this project launched. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Another question before I come in? Oh, Liz Dyer.
I have a question. What committees are you working in the legislature at the moment?
So I am really happy about the committees that I'm working on. You know about my background in tax. And so fortunately, I was assigned to the, let me see if I'm getting this right, Taxation and Revenue Stabilization Committee. That's the committee I'll be on during the regular legislative session. I've also been assigned to the Water and Natural Resources Committee, and I'm really excited about being a part of that one, which is actually called the House Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources, just so I get it correct. But during this interim committee, the two that I asked for was one, economic development, because I wanted to make sure that what we're doing is that we are having jobs and that we're giving people the economic resources that they need to survive. And also I asked to be assigned to the Mortgage Finance Authority Act, so that we can look at ways to make sure that this money that is available to make sure that people don't get evicted is there. So those are my four committees.
Thanks. That's a great lead in for my question. You ready?
I'm holding my breath, but yes, Margaret, go ahead.
All right, so this is near and dear to me and to Bob Carlton, because Bob is the author of a resolution which was passed in the fall 2020 DPNM State Central Committee meeting that had to do with community solar. And specifically, the resolution calls for legislation to enact appropriate measures to enable community-owned solar installations during the 2021 legislative session. So this bill was proposed. I don't remember, I think it's HB 106. And it's in committee. It went into the committee, one of the committees that you are now sitting on, that Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee, and it sat there. So effectively it died in committee. I don't know all of the precise language or what a piece of legislation that just doesn't go anywhere. But what I would like to know is, do you have any thoughts about how to maybe move community solar forward? I did not know that you were on the committee when I developed the question. So this is like serendipitous. So what do you think can be done? I mean, this is the will of the people. We have a resolution by the state party that asks the legislators to act on community-owned solar.
You know, I did have the opportunity to look at House Bill 106, which deals with community solar. And what I was surprised at is that as you look at each one of these bills, there's usually an analysis of the bill. There was no analysis of this bill at all, nothing that's placed in there to give legislators a chance to look at it and make decisions about it. What I think happened in this case is that the people who put forth the bill, which were, it was four amazing women who put forth this bill. And the people who were opposing it, this makes me think that they were sitting down having conversations trying to determine how they could figure out how to make this work. And what I also think that happened in my conversation with some builders is that there was a concern about how they could include community solar into homes and still make them affordable as they're continuing to sell them. And so what would have been really helpful in this instance is if this bill had been turned into a study so that we could look at it over the summer and been able to do a little bit more analysis on it, because there was no analysis. And so what I would like to see happen, if we can't get this on the 30-day session, because as you know, this is a governor's call, she gets to make the determination, that we look at what was the difference between the people who were pushing the bill and the people who were pushing against the bill, and see if we needed some more time or to make it work. Because community solar is incredibly important. It's a lot less expensive, and it provides good natural resources for individuals and for homes and for our communities. So that's what I would do to push this if this is going to continue to go forward. So I'll have to have a conversation with Linda Lopez, Joanne Ferrari, Leah Stefanix, and Patricia Raval Caballero, and get also their views on why this bill never made it out of committee. At the very least, when these bills are introduced, they at least have one committee hearing. This one did not even make it out of committee. So something else was going wrong. I don't know what it was, but we'll find out because this is something we need to take a look at.
There you go. That's perfect. Thank you. Hey, Joe, you got a question? You're muted. There you
Okay,
go.
sorry. Yes, I think it's good to be considering legislation and responsibility for not securing guns, when children use them. But just wondering why it would only be a class 4 felony. I mean, it seems like a very serious offense. It's negligent homicide. Is this something that's going to be difficult for the legislature to pass?
So let me just say that a bill similar to this has been put forth twice. Once by a woman named Linda Trujillo, where she made a difference between when a gun was not secured causing the death of a person. And in that bill, it was, I think it was House Bill 130, if you want to take a look at it. And in that bill, it was a 4th degree felony if a death was caused. And then there was a bill that was put forth by Antoinette Sedillo Lopez, and I think that was Senate Bill 224. And her highest penalty was a $500 fine. And I said, we can't do that. So it could be, you have made a really good point, Joe, because usually if you're involved in some type of criminal activity where you are maybe even just riding in a car, and if someone is killed, that could be 2nd degree murder, that could be all sorts of other incidents that could be implemented. So I don't know, we need to sit down and have a conversation with that. I've spoken to the DA and people who are running for the Attorney General's office. And I'm gonna have to have this conversation with the sheriff too, to find out what can we actually get on the books to at least get something started. Right now, there's absolutely nothing. And so we need to make people more responsible. If you are going to have a gun and you have it in your house, just be responsible with it. That's all we're asking.
Thank you. Bob Carlton.
I just wanted to make the point, Representative Herndon, that we had 3 guns stolen from vehicles in the month of July. I don't have the August statistics, just in the foothills area here. To me, that's an inexcusable lapse on the part of the gun owners. We know that that those guns are not being stolen by people who want to improve their marksmanship by going down to cover, the caliber gun range for practice. We know that they have other motivation and goals. I would hope that that class 4 penalty would apply to any gun that is taken that should have been secured.
And it does, not just to a parent, any gun that's not being secured properly and in a place where it cannot be accessed. So you're absolutely correct.
Thank you. Judith, a question?
Pamela, it's wonderful to see you.
Thank you.
Does your bill, the gun safety bill, is that going to be the title of the bill? I'm asking because I'm wondering how we, as part of House District 28, can start calling the governor's office and ask that it be put on the governor's agenda.
Oh, so thank you for asking that question. You need to start at making those calls right now. I have just learned that the governor is asking for anything that's going to be on the agenda that we are putting on, meaning legislators. She wants to know by September the 1st. So we call this, we're calling this, it can't be put in law like this, I understand, but it can be referred to the Benny Hardgrave Gun Safety Act.
Okay.
And so to refer to the governor, that's how it's been presented to her. And if you tell her you want to see that gun legislation passed and on the agenda, that we need every single person that's calling. I can tell you yesterday, sitting there in that press conference with the mother of that 13-year-old was absolutely heartbreaking. And no mother should have to go through that, sending her child to school thinking he's going to learn, and then in the middle of the day learning that he's been shot 6 times is just untenable. And if that gun had been locked up, we do take the position. If it had been put in a safe and secure place, that little boy may be alive today. So we're calling it and referencing that even to the governor right now as the Benny Hardgrade Gun Safety Act.
I guess I'd like to ask my fellow people who is House District 28, and especially the people on this call, to please start calling the governor's office. This is critical. It is a basic issue. When I worked for the district attorney's office in Santa Fe as the victim advocate, I worked with the community in Santa Fe to have a similar bill passed. And that was 20 years ago, and we could get nowhere with it. So please support this bill. It is a basic common sense bill. If you have a weapon, you safeguard it by putting a safety gun lock on it. It's very simple. Thank you.
Yes, Liz.
A quick question. Do you have that phone number by any chance, or could you put it in the chat?
I
the
can get it
governor's
for you very quickly. Oh,
Okay.
there it is. Thank you, Michelle Meadows.
Yay. Yay, Michelle. You, okay.
Glad you're with us, Michelle. Let's see, any other questions for Pamela? Josie.
So one big idea I have, given the recent approval of monies to fund early childhood learning, I would love to see K through 4th grade classes capped at 10, no more than 10 kids. And then 5th through 8th grade, no more than 15. And everything above that, no more than 20. Now that's a really big idea. And when you Mexicans hear that, what they don't understand is that I worked in a school where English classes and Spanish classes were limited to 15. APS is facing a teacher shortage. We're 300 teachers short this year, and it's going to grow. I believe it's 60% of our teacher workforce is approaching retirement age. We need an infusion of monies to attract people to this profession. But I often hear, I will forego the small increase in pay if you'll give me a good working condition. 30 kids is just untenable. I cannot do the job with 30 kids. And I know exactly what they're talking about. So what's it going to take to get that infusion of funds? I understand, I've heard from union leaders and administrators that oftentimes the money that is approved has limits to it. Anything that comes out of the Legislative Finance Education Committee, I believe, they put strict rules on it that only make our circumstances worse.
So let me just say to you, I don't know if you saw the paper on Saturday, and it talked about the 8.8 billion, not million, but $1 billion surplus within our state budget right now. And so we heard from one person saying, well, I don't know how we're going to spend it. You just described a way how we can spend it. We can get more teachers, but pay them a living wage, a wage that will recognize also the value of what they're bringing to the classroom. You said you would forego, but everybody may not have that same
Right.
idea. Maybe they need to have the funds. So I would just say, that what we need to do is like you're going to call about the Benny Hardgrove Gun Safety Act. You also need to call and say, listen, Governor, I have a way in which we can spend that 8.8 billion. This is what we can do. So if you have data and statistics that you can share with me, like how many more teachers, what would it cost, and what should that cost be? Help me so that I can get that into the budget, but I need your assistance. Everybody who's in education, because you will be providing the assistance that we need to push that. We can help them spend that 8.8 billion.
Amen.
It's proud to have 8.8 billion.
I agree.
Let me just say that I love having Pamela here, and I want everybody to have an opportunity to talk to her, but I do have a couple of other folks on the agenda. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to ask Julie to just briefly bring us up to date. I think you and I talked, and it was going to be about door knocking. So Julie, tell us what you're up to with your campaign.
Yeah, I'll be really brief. I know you've all been sitting there in your chairs. Thank you so much for coming today. I know many of you are my donors, my volunteers, so thank you. And I just want to say that I have sat down with Representative Herndon, and I've sat down with Josie, and I am excited to work with both of them together on these challenges. I'm actually a policy analyst for the state legislature. It's my profession. And I'm excited to work with the state legislature on these goals. Me and Josie align on our goals of smaller classrooms, higher pay for teachers. But my perspective isn't from the classroom. My perspective is from policy. So I'm super excited to work with Josie as we bring our strengths to the table. Now, I do cover half of HD 28 and Josie covers the other half. So the campaign is rocking and rolling right now. And I wanted to actually ask your ward, we want to come and door knock with you together in your ward on either September 11th or September 18th. And I actually just wanted to ask which date would be better for your ward for us to knock together. I want your help to do this. I can't do it by myself. We need door knockers, and we also need drivers to help the door knockers, to bring them. We're going to go in teams of 2. And so I honestly just wanted to ask you all which date works better for this ward, for Margaret and your ward. For us, we meet at 9 a.m. at Heritage Hills Park, which is the park that Melanie's campaign met at as well. And then we will get the literature, and we'll have all the routes ready to go for this ward. So I would love to know which date works best for you, the 11th or the 18th.
I love that you asked. That is just excellent. I'm looking here, and I don't know the answer to that question. What I would suspect is all of the folks who are here can go back and talk within their own precincts. So we have a lot of sort of precinct level folks operating here. So for myself, let me say 9/11.
Okay, great. Yeah, I like that idea. Is that a good date for, oh, look, I'm seeing Liz, Judith, the 11th.
Yeah, so I can't speak for others. It looks like we got a couple. Shannon's looking at her calendar. She can go.
Great. Okay.
And what we can do, and we can reach out into our precinct. So one of the things that a few of us as precinct leaders have had, we've set up on the Nextdoor app. So we have precinct level matches between our neighbors, our folks on Nextdoor, and Democratic voters.
Okay.
So we created these lists. And so we can put the word out there too.
Okay.
So 9 o'clock, Heritage Hills Park. I don't know where that is, so
It's off of Ventura, and I'll get you all the information, Margaret, so you can get it out to all the precincts. But here's our beautiful literature. It's all ready to go. Sorry, my screen's being funny, but it's great. It's beautiful. We have the teacher support. I will be getting the union endorsement this week. Very exciting. So the literature is all printed and ready to go. We will be doing minivan and also paper routes. So if you're comfortable with paper, we'll have paper. If you have minivan, we'll do minivan. As many of you that can come out on the 11th, 9 a.m., we would really appreciate it. If you can't do it that date, we will be door knocking your ward for the next probably week or two after that. So then you can contact my campaign and say, hey, I'd love a route, even though I can't make it on that date, because we're willing to work with your schedule.
Perfect.
So
That is perfect. Good politicking, girl. We appreciate that. I had asked Joe Friedman and Bob Carlton to talk about the last rules and resolutions committee meetings that they attended on behalf of Bernalillo County. And you want a minute each? Do you want 2 minutes each? Because we got to draw for this book. That's the most important thing that's left for us after you guys.
I could take maybe 30 seconds.
There you go, Joe.
There was a meeting in mid-August of the resolutions committee. And the subject, there are various resolutions that have been referred to the committee. And I would say the meeting was more organizational than anything else, and there was no real substantive discussion of any of the resolutions. And it was pretty much agreed that they all needed to be referred to subcommittees in order to be further considered. Since then, the chairman of the committee has suggested consolidating subcommittees. So I think that's the next thing that's going to happen. So I'm sorry to make it so procedural, but that seems to be what's happened so far. As for the resolutions themselves, they cover a wide gamut, and I tried to pull them up. They're in a Google document, and that was a disaster. So I cannot access it anymore. But if anybody's interested, just let me know, and I will try to provide a list of the resolutions. But and also if anybody has a resolution that they want to proffer, please let me know that. Or if you want to send it through Margaret, that's fine too.
Joe, I saw Flora smiling there when you said Google Docs, because she knows how I feel about Google Docs.
I had it this morning and then they went in the trash and they cannot be recovered. I don't know why.
Sort of the mysterious Google Docs. Anyway, thank you, Joe. Bob, a word or two for you?
Yes, I did attend the rules meeting on the 15th. We did not achieve a quorum, so it wasn't a real meeting. I guess it was a chat. I was asked to see if we could learn more about problems that LGBTQ individuals and Hispanic individuals have had in joining caucuses. But I was advised by both the chair and Pamela that these are state central committee issues, and that the state central committee is already working toward compliance on both of these issues. Richard Cooley, who is the chair of the LGBTQ caucus, said he is open to new members and volunteered his address, which is richardecooley@gmail.com. We did form two committees, one to rewrite the rules to be completed at the State Central Committee completes their pending revision of the rules. They haven't been substantially updated since 1985. And a second committee, an ethics committee for the county, was formed. Many volunteered to be on this, including myself. Only 21 or 22 of the 64 members were present. A quorum requires only 40%. One participant said the requirement should be increased to 50%, but no one else understood why, since we couldn't even manage 40%. We quit a bit early. We did not adjourn since we didn't have an actual meeting. So there, end of the report.
Thank you very much. The lesson. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. All righty, let's see. I think we're ready to have Liz draw. Look at this. She wrote everybody's name down. Whoop, don't dump them. Put them in a bowl.
Get 'em.
And she's going to draw. So once again, the winner of the door prize will receive Here Right Matters.
All right. I'm gonna pick. Whoop. Oh,
Thank
one just dropped down. I'll pick that one.
for donating this book. All right, the winner is,
Well, it's Michelle Meters.
hey, Michelle. All right, Michelle, if you're willing, drop your address in the chat. I'll pick it up, or stay on with me after and just give it to me there. And there you go. And I will bring you the book. All right, any further final comments? Otherwise, we will adjourn until October. All right. Oh, does Flora have a question? Oh,
No, I just want to say I'm so proud of you, Margaret, and all of you all. This board is amazing, and you're doing great work, and it's so good to see the energy here. So thank you for all you do for your community and the party. Thank you.
my pleasure, and it truly is. Let me just say that in October, we've got Maureen Scourin coming to talk to us about redistricting. She was became an expert on this topic prior to the census. And I have reached out to Cynthia Hall on the PRC to see if maybe she wants to talk with us about whatever's going on with PNM's merger at that time. So it could be a done deal by then, who knows? But, and I have not heard back, but I'll continue to pursue Cynthia. So once again, thank you very much. And we're going to adjourn the meeting.